The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bitten by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. Dying alien helped me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey there, and welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is André, your podcast host. Big thanks to Ukla the Mock for our theme song, Superpowers. And big thanks to you, gentle listener, for tuning in once again to another episode. Today we have on Z.M.Thomas, a comic book writer doing some very interesting stuff in the field of, well, just writing in general. He deep into the parody, deep into kind of breaking down some of the fun to be had and some of the things we take very seriously, especially around religion. He worked on a couple of books called The Bible 2 and Abe the Aborted Fetus, as we talk about in the conversation. Taking a lot of influence from indie comics and creating his own subversive brand of independent comics and doing some pretty cool stuff. I'm excited to get into it and read some more of it, and we have a really cool conversation. It's funny because towards the end of the conversation, he actually brings up who his wife is, which I believe I may have known at one point and totally forgot. So during the conversation, he mentions early on that him and Allison were at a convention. And I thought he was just referencing that he was by someone, because it was kind of about the topic we were talking about. He was by Allison Court, the voice actress and star of The Big Comfy Couch. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then sort of passed it by. And then towards the end of the conversation, he brings up that she is in fact his wife, and I totally missed that point. And we discussed a little bit as well. But if you are familiar with him as Allison's husband, it does get touched on, just not till near the end of the conversation. And as anyone who is married, as myself is, it is you're not defined by your partner. And I'm sure that if you have a famous spouse, you don't want to always have to talk about them when you're trying to talk about your own work, and I would certainly try not to do that to my guests when we're interviewing. As I mentioned, it's a conversation, and I'm glad I got to unpack ZM's life and learn a bit about his where his inspirations come from and what he does. And yeah, and it's cool. It's really cool to meet some of these people in this podcast, especially folks whose work I'm not the most familiar with, because I get to kind of experience it for the first time through them, describing why it is what it is and how they came to create it and the influences in their life that brought it to the forefront. And I had a great conversation getting to where as ZM is today through that, because it's cool, and his work sounds very fun. So check out that conversation there. Going on in my current life, we're down to 2025. Things are, about the same as they were before, I'd say, which isn't a bad thing. We have a new kitten. His name is Frodo. He's running around the house like a lunatic. I don't know if I got to this on a previous episode, if I discussed it, but he has hypophagia. It's called cerebellar hypophagia, which is like wobbly cat syndrome, which means he tends to wobble a bit when he runs around. It's a part of his brain that controls motor function didn't quite develop properly because his mother was ill when he was born. He was part of a litter of many other kittens that were all named after Lord of the Rings characters. Unfortunately, he was the only one to survive. So Frodo is in fact part of the family, running around. He's incredibly adorable and very cuddly. Like, I'll just be working later at night and he'll just come up and scream at me till I pick him up, and then he'll just fall asleep in my arm, which makes it tough to do work. I try to move him to my leg, but he tends to fall off my legs a lot, so I try to keep him in my arms. And it's adorable. He's adorable, and I'm very happy that he's here and livening up the place. Not that I need livening up. We still have 3 other cats, but he's here, and he's a blast. So yeah, what do we got to talk about my life anymore? Things are chugging along, and we're now into season 6, I believe, of the Graphic Histories Podcast, which is insane. I started this in 2020. It's now 2025. And we're chugging along at a breakneck speed. I don't believe I missed an episode last year, which is impressive by my standards, because my life's pretty busy. But I try my damnedest to make sure we have a new episode every Monday, and we do. And I can't thank my guests enough for making that a reality, and I can't thank you, the listener, for making it viable. Putting it out there and making it getting it into the ears, helping promote it. That all really helps. So please keep up the great work. Get this in as many ear holes as possible. And yeah, let's chug along into another amazing season with some more fantastic guests. So let's get to one more of those with my conversation with Z.M. Thomas.
Yeah, good to meet you.
Yeah, where are you calling in from?
Minneapolis, actually.
Oh, very
Yeah,
nice. Very
yeah. I
nice.
was. I realized I forgot to ask what 2 o'clock we were we were going to be going at.
Oh, yeah, yours is usually what I do. So, is
Oh,
this
okay.
okay or
Yeah, this is great.
oh,
This is
is
great.
is that a big comfy couch sweater you're wearing?
It is. Yeah,
Wow. You
yeah.
guys got that down in the States? I thought that was a strictly American thing or a Canadian thing.
No, it's actually it was on PBS when I grew
Right.
up.
Of course.
But I hate to admit, but I've never seen an episode.
Well, yeah, it was I thought it was yeah, it started in Canada, that's right. But
Yeah,
it was on YTV here, which is our sort of kids channel.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I'm
I
I'm in I'm in Nova Scotia, Canada, so
Oh,
you're
fantastic.
way over about that's why I'm only 2 hours ahead of you. So when you're trying to figure out times, I was like, yeah, that works out well.
Yeah, Allison and we were in I want to say Cape Breton?
Oh
No,
yeah,
Corner Brook, I think.
Newfoundland.
Yeah, yeah, we were just doing a show out that way this past I want to say October.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's lovely.
Oh, nice. It's a nice
Yeah.
area.
Oh yeah, when I'm not here in Minnie, I'm in Toronto, so
Ah, yes, you travel around. That's awesome.
I do, yeah.
Awesome.
Born and raised here. I have two young kids that live here, so I'm always back in Minnie. But when I'm not seeing the kids, I'm usually back in TO.
Yeah, I don't have much of a sense. Like, I guess, like any Canadian, you know what you know about American cities, unless you've either been there, which I've been to a few, or um, you just see them on TV. So, Minneapolis, I mean, I don't have much of a sense for that place. I don't know
Well,
where I would have been exposed to it in any kind of fiction.
yeah, it's Minneapolis. I know is we got the Mall of America,
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. All right. It's coming
and
in now. I get that.
I think that's about it. Like we have
I
a
know.
lot of sports teams that make everybody sad.
Yeah, yeah. I'm one of my many side gigs. I'm a professional wrestler, so
Oh, are you? That's
yeah. So
awesome.
I think the extent of my knowledge is like I think Brock Lesnar's from Indianapolis and maybe a few other of the wrestlers, the bigger wrestlers. But
Yeah, Jesse Ventura. He was
right,
actually
yes.
our he was our governor for a while.
Oh yes, yeah, yeah. That's right. Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Very much familiar with Jesse Ventura. His work on Predator and his wrestling work.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
he's a cool guy. He seems like he'd be a neat guy to hang out with.
Yeah, I think he runs like a pot business now.
Really, that seems very much
Yeah.
up his alley.
Yeah, I think it's like an edibles
Really.
because
Just Jesse the
believe it
Body
or
Ventura slinging edibles. That's amazing.
oh yeah. Well, funnily enough, I the state of Minnesota actually they screwed up their legislation. They
Hmm.
were trying to ban edibles and weed, but they wrote in an accidental loophole, which completely legalized it up to 5 milligrams per gummy.
For just edibles, or like can his weed legalized as well?
No, no. We have like medical, but I think you have to be terminal for the medical.
Oh, really?
And they were trying to do that with the edibles too. But funnily enough, they completely legalized it. And so now all the gas stations and like smoke shops and corner shops, they can sell like THC edibles and whatnot.
That's
So,
pretty amazing, actually. It's everything. It's all legal here in Canada, so you can go to the
oh yeah,
liquor. Well, we have liquor stores, depending where you are. You can buy in grocery stores at some places, but you have official outlets that are the place you
yep,
go pick up liquor in the area I am in anyway, and they all sell weed too. So it's really surreal when that all became legal to like walk into the liquor store and then walk to the back where they have the weed and like they just
yeah.
have them showing you bags of weed and I mean it's been quite a while now, but it was quite a when it first happened, it was very strange. You're like, am I gonna get in trouble for this? Like you're like you're standing there buying a big bag of
Yeah.
weed and edibles and sprays and everything else and vape pens that do weed now and like it's just it's a wild world. That's
Oh
funny.
yeah, yeah. I remember the first time I was there, and it got legalized, and it was just kind of like, all right. I was no idea what to expect or anything, and I was like, okay. And then I remember the first like 2 years up until like COVID, it was like a weed shop on every corner.
Mm,
It was
yeah.
like a weed shop, and then what, like a Tim Hortons,
Oh yeah. Yeah, they are
and
every street pretty much.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, there's a weird thing too in the treaty laws that the indigenous people have, that like a lot of them when you go through any reserves in our well Nova Scotia anyway, but I think it's like this in other kind of places too. They have these massive weed shops that you go in and buy weed. That's like you have to go on the reservation to buy it. Um,
Yeah,
but it's and I think the legal matter is dubious. I think there's some kind of a treaty act thing that there's sort of loophole that they're able to exploit. But it's insane the amount, like they're all, because you can't really like advertise it like in a store or anything here. So it's weird to drive by the highway and there's these big shops with illuminated pot leaves that are like neon and like everything like down the street. It's really wild because like in the area I live in, which is a place called Truro, it's right in the middle of Nova Scotia. Um, they like they're all along the highway in this particular area,
yeah.
so that you just drive by and there's like six of them that are all like these massive lit up, bright, like super fancy looking weed shops, which is really weird.
I mean,
Awesome.
I feel like they all need to have like those really bright neon lights.
Yeah. One of them even
Yeah.
has the Treaty Act in a big fancy sign on the building. I'm guessing to like the cops show up to point at it. I don't know. But it's clever on the part of the person running it, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think our generation right now is like, ooh, neon lights, and we just instantly are attracted to it. We're just gonna walk. It's
Yeah, neon really revolutionized the short attention span targeted advertising, that's for sure.
oh my
Ooh,
God, it
I'm
really
in.
does.
So
It's
so you grew up in Minneapolis. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
I grew up kind of in the St. Paul area, went to
Huh?
high school there.
Were
Moved down
comics
to
always a part of your childhood?
a little bit. I grew up kind of reading the X-Men,
Hmm.
Spider-Man, and primarily Marvel. Um, Actually, believe it or not, was never huge into comic books growing up.
I believe it.
And, we had a place called Shinder's. I would always go there with my dad, and they had like racks of comic books. They had Pogs, action figures, and my dad went there for the porn.
Okay.
And so my brother and I,
He took you along while porn shopping.
yes, he did. But they had
Yeah.
like a little back part in the store.
Oh, like the
So
kids sections over here, and then he was,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
play
And
here
so it's
while I
like,
go. Oh, yeah.
yep. And so my brother and I, we would always kind of hang out, and I think it was I'm trying to remember. I think Topps back in the day had their own comic book line.
Hmm. Oh
And it
yeah.
was
Yep.
I was reading like Jurassic Park, Mars Attacks, and a lot of those kind of they felt a little pulpy because they weren't as polished as like say the Marvel or the DC, and I think Image at that time was relatively new.
Hmm.
So like I think Spawn was.
So were you like a movie kid, and like that was what drew you into like the idea that they were the connected to the films?
I was so my dad, yeah, he was always a big sci-fi guy.
Hmm.
So and horror. So
Okay.
any kind of like the old school horror, like Tales from the Crypt, um, Mars Attacks, like the trading cards, the uh the Jurassic Park book and movie was like my favorite growing up. So anything Jurassic Park, I would just consume.
Nice.
And so primarily, yeah, movies, video games, kind of, in that same realm.
Nice.
That was kind of my first introduction to it. And then the animated series for X-Men debuted when I was pretty young. I think that was what, 92?
And 93, I think. No, 92. I think you're right. I think you're right. Because 97,
Yeah.
it had 5 seasons, and 97 is the new one, which would have been the sixth season at the time. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so that makes sense.
And so, kind of doing the fan casting of who's going to be in the live action movies and stuff like that. So my friends would always at like the school that I went to, they would always like bring comic books and we would all trade. And I think my very first X-Men comic that I personally bought was the wedding between Cyclops and Jean Grey.
Nice, classic. Very
Yeah.
famous. The cover, the Jim Lee cover with him at the wedding with
Yep.
the dress
Yep.
that's kind of flows all at the bottom. Yeah, that's really cool. How how
Yeah.
how close was the how close was your fan casting to when the movie came
Oh,
out? Probably not even hopefully close at all, I'd imagine.
one was close.
Really?
One actually was spot on.
Oh, was it
Um,
Patrick Stewart? Is that one was
yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That was the obvious one. I remember Wizard put out one of those like when they
Yep.
used to fan cast these movies, and there was one where I mean they always did that one, which just made perfect sense.
Oh, 100%. And I was nowhere close on any of the other ones.
Yeah, well, most of them, with the exception of like I guess Ian McKellen, were virtually unknowns, right? Like
Yeah.
pretty essentially. I mean, I can't name Rebecca Rain Stamos maybe, but I only know her from that movie. So Halle Berry, I
Actually,
guess, was kind of
actually,
somewhat.
I think I was correct with Beast with Kelsey Grammer.
Oh well, yeah. Took him a while to get to
Because
that one, but it made sense.
yeah, and my mom, she was obsessed with the show Frasier.
Hmm.
And so obviously he was in Cheers and all that. But I think seeing the TV show Frasier, I was like, that's pretty obvious to have him as Beast.
Yeah,
And the one that we never got was Gambit up
right.
until just this past year. And
Oh well, no,
Channing
we had
Tatum.
him in Wolverine Origins, if you recall. If you recall briefly,
Did we?
yeah, it was Taylor Kitsch, I think it was the actor that played
Oh
him in
my
that.
God. Oh, you're right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
The
completely.
John Carter, Warlord of Mars, that guy.
Oh,
In that
wow.
live action movie. Yeah, I feel like he's
Yeah,
Canadian, maybe. I think he is. But
probably.
yeah, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was certainly not a yeah. I mean, the Channing Tatum version was really funny. Me and Davin, the guy that I think reached out to you for this interview, he we have a podcast where we talk about the X-Men, the original X-Men cartoon, and then we did the new cartoon, and now we're doing X-Men Evolution. But
Oh,
we often
nice.
we're fan casting the new the Marvel universe. When they bring in the mutants who they're going to be now, in every episode we kind of do one or two of them. But we didn't do Gambit yet. I'm not convinced that like I like Channing Tatum's Gambit a lot, but I feel like it really fits in a comedy realm. And if you're trying to do something
Yeah.
semi-serious, it probably, I don't know. But I know that he's probably gonna do more, and maybe it'll be in another Deadpool, or maybe we Secret Wars, who knows. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it would be interesting to kind of plop him into like a more serious, if they did a more serious movie. I don't know. Who knows?
I can't see it.
No, I
I
can't
thought
either. But
I thought he was really funny, but for me, I always thought that a really good Gambit, if we're gonna fan cast, would be the Frenchie from The Boys.
oh yeah, he would be good. Yeah, he would
I
be good.
think he's I think he's gritty enough. He's kind of got that svelte, like, lean body type.
Mhm. He's
And
pretty
I just
short, I think, isn't he?
maybe.
I don't know. He's probably maybe he's just short compared to how tall like um oh god, I'm blanking on his name. The guy that plays Butcher. He's not crazy tall, but the guy that plays
Oh,
Huey, I think
Carl
is kind of
Urban?
yeah, Carl Urban. But Huey Quaid, right?
Quaid, yeah.
Yeah, Jack Quaid. I think he's kind of tall. He seems tall compared to the rest of the group.
He is, yeah. I think he's relatively tall. At least he looks that way.
Well, I don't think his dad is super tall. I don't know. Yeah, he's eight. Yeah, he's a little taller
Uh,
than me. I'm
huh.
oh no, he's a little shorter than me. So I'm 6'2", so I guess he'd be about 6'1".
Okay.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's fun. So what did get you? So that was the comics carry through after the X-Men, or you just sort of came to it a little later in life?
A little bit. I was very particular on what I read.
Hmm.
I would always read, for me, Garth Ennis's Punisher.
Ah,
That
nice.
was that was always my favorite. Anything by Garth Ennis, really.
Was this the
Just
Marvel Knights run, or is this like the before it went to the Max
it
story?
it started with Marvel Knights, and then I followed it into the Max.
Hmm.
And then once Garth Ennis actually retired from the Punisher series, I too stopped reading it.
Oh, really? Well, the
Yeah.
Max didn't carry on that much longer. They had that writer doing it, Layman or not Layman. Was it Jonathan Mayberry or someone like that? I think it was someone that
John.
was like some kind of a writer, and
Yeah.
then it ended up with Jason Aaron sort of wrapping it up.
Right. 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 Yeah. I think once they killed Barracuda. Sorry, spoilers.
I mean, that was a million years ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
he did get his own miniseries though. That was fun.
Oh, it was actually. I
Yeah.
really like I think they only did one volume, but it was like the Thor. where they had like the Norse gods come down into Manhattan and just like wreak havoc and kill everybody
Is
in the
this a
most like
Max
brutal
comic? I didn't
ways.
know about this. This sounds awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it's actually written by Garth.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow. I know Garth is famously not a big fan of um superheroes generally. Like on his
yeah,
in his well, I mean the boys particularly kind of skewers that, but even his Punisher Max comic was a lot of making fun of that. Like whenever Wolverine
yeah.
or Spider-Man or Daredevil show up. Even that last arc in the Marvel Knights run where like it's like Daredevil, Punisher, uh the Hulk and, like there's a bunch of other characters running around and it kind of wraps that all up before we get into the super serious sort of realistic version of it, which I really, really dug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, was it the Marvel Knights that that Punisher actually drove over Wolverine
Yeah,
in
with
a like the
with the
cement
steamroller.
roller?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the one where they're like all these little people that were like living in the sewers and they were like cutting off people at the shins and it was like making fun of how short
Right.
Wolverine is. Um and they and then I think the guy writing Wolverine a little later made a joke, like had another fight between the two of them. It was almost like an answer to that first fight because he really hated how Wolverine was depicted in that. So he had like,
Yep.
and they made like an allegory because Punisher had like some kind of bodybuilding magazines in his bag that he was like maybe a closeted gay, homosexual or something. And like, it's very, very much kind of petty and very much didn't age well in the way that, the world looks at that stuff now. But
Yeah.
it's kind of funny because it's like the writers are having like a mini feud within their own comics, just having their characters beat up each other's characters each time they
Oh my God.
interacted. Yeah, it's
Oh, that's
ridiculous.
funny. Yeah.
So you were like more into the realistic, gritty, dark kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And then I would say Jhonen Vasquez,
Ah, nice.
with Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, Squee, I Feel Sick.
How did you come
Um,
to find Johnny the Homicidal Maniac? 'Cause that's a book in Squee too that like I didn't think was super accessible, right? I mean, I came across it through Wizard and
yeah.
then just found it in used bookstores somewhere. Some of them. Now,
So
of course, comic stores would carry it, but back then it wasn't like a super common thing to come across.
I actually grew up across the street from one of the largest comic shops, I think, in the Midwest.
Oh, okay. that,
And
that
it
makes it
had
easy.
an incredible selection. I always preferred kind of the indie stuff, and I was really into like slave labor graphics,
Hmm.
and stuff like that. So this is, of course, I'm in my teens. I was goth. I was like really into like the industrial
Ooh,
metal, heavy metal
nice.
kind of stuff. So I was trying to find things a little bit off the beaten path.
Hmm.
And Johnny and Squee were something that really spoke to me. I liked his absurdist humor, the irreverence, and I was like, all right, I'm kind of really getting into this. And I didn't really know where to go from there. So I just kind of started picking certain writers that I would like and just kind of go down that path. I started reading like 2000 AD with Judge Dredd.
Nice.
Uh, you know, it's your typical teenage angst.
Yeah. Well, like it's funny because I was always a kind of a nerdy kid, but I definitely in the way I would have appeared. But I was really into like new metal music and that sort of stuff growing up. So like
Yep.
I was always sort of like goth adjacent, I think, in the way that like I never had, a lot of money or parents that would probably buy me a lot of like that sort of stuff. But if I lived in a bigger place and there was a goth contingent that could have welcomed me in, I probably would have been one of them at one point.
Yep.
Because I certainly was finding a lot of the things that they sort of liked, a lot of the literature, a lot of the books, comics, music especially, were like the things
Yeah.
that I was gravitating towards in school. So it's funny because like I went to a very small school. So if there was a goth contingent, I may have had a community there, but I never quite got there. It's cool that you
Yeah.
liked Johann Vasquez. I really like his work as well. Did that lead you to Zim and stuff too eventually, or?
It did. Yeah. It led me to Zim. And then, my ex-girlfriend at the time, she was also a Jhonen fan. So she showed me Mindless Self-Indulgence.
Nice.
And I think he did a lot of the album art that was unfortunately never released.
Hmm.
And so I started following him a bit more. And, just it's funny how like all these little avenues in my life, they're all kind of semi-connected,
Hmm.
whether it's music, video games, movies, comics. Um, and funnily enough, I actually never wanted to get into comic books.
Really?
Yeah, that was actually a friend of mine. when I worked at Electronic Boutique
Oh yeah.
before that was GameStop. She actually proposed that I start up a comic book company with her.
Really?
And I was always just into the novels and all that. And I didn't really feel like I had the wherewithal or the knowledge and the history of comic books that I know a lot of the fan base has. Because
What was
it
her
is like one
impetus
of,
for asking you?
well, she knows a writer. She wanted to get into writing.
Okay.
Um, and she was knowledgeable on the comic book side.
Hmm.
And so I was like, okay, let's do it. And so we kind of get together in 2004. We create the company Trepidation Comics together. And I create my first project, Echoes of Dawn, which is a kind of a noir horror series that I have not released
Oh.
because it's not great. And
Hey, hey, yeah, that's where you start, man. I think it was Warren
yeah,
Ellison who said that, like, the good writer. I mean, a lot of writers said the good be good writers just to write, keep writing. You
yeah,
make mistakes, basically learn from them. I know, but like, yeah, it's like just write, put something out. I think like 90% of writing is just finishing the thing you're writing. If you can do that, you're ahead of a lot of
yeah,
people. So it's like, do
yep,
that, and then learn from it. If there's stuff in that first one you don't like, learn from it, fix it the next time. It's very rare
yeah,
that
and
most
just
writers' first books are like heralded as the best things ever.
yeah, yes, so I completely agree.
Yeah.
And having just even gone over some of the projects that I've done in the past, I'm like, oh, I'd fix this and I'd fix
Hmm.
that, and I'd kind of continue. And so she started writing a book called The Dark Project, and there was no joy in it for her. It
Hmm.
looked like she was getting stressed out. There was like these obligations, and it was just like way more difficult than she had anticipated.
Hmm.
And so she left the company and ended up writing novels.
No.
And I stuck with the company and wrote comic books. So it's
Oh,
almost
really?
like we did like this huge swap. It's,
You played the reverse card from Uno and just like swapped lives.
we really did.
Yeah.
And she's found great success, doing the novels, and she's
Mm.
got like an incredible fan base. And it's just really funny to me that it's just like, all right, so the career path that I never expected to go down is what I'm doing. And she's going down the career path that I actually originally saw myself going down.
That's wild.
So
Wow. So like, was it just she couldn't penetrate the way to like the method of writing as far as for comics? Was that like what was joyless to her? Or?
I think the difficulty was being able to try to convey a story without using the words, but allowing the artist to tell that story
Yeah.
through the script that you're writing.
Hmm.
And that took me a little bit too, because
A lot of
my first
trust.
book, oh yeah, it's a lot of
Yeah.
trust, but it's also as a writer, you're conditioned to be like, I'm gonna write captions. So
Hmm.
this way you get the exposition, you get the idea of what's happening, and you're telling and not showing.
Hmm.
And I think that somebody who is a writer is like, I don't know how to go do this. This is frustrating. I don't like it because I feel like in a way I'm not getting what I need out of it. And she was like, I can't.
Hmm. Well, hey, I mean, it's a very, um, I guess I mean, like every once in a while when you read a comic that's written by a novelist, it's always different. Like there's something different
Yeah,
about it for the most part. Like I know there are guys that have come and gone, like Chuck Palahniuk did his Fight Club 3 and then 4 or whatever through his comics.
yeah,
But even when oh man, I'm blanking on his name. The guy that wrote Kraken and like Railsea, China Milamvu or Melanvu. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. But he did like Dial H for Hero for DC when I think they did the whole
yeah,
rebrand with the new 52 or something. And it was cool. It was different though, or like
yeah,
dude from, I guess he's not a writer per se, but the guy from My Chemical Romance writing Umbrella Academy. There's something
yep.
different about it. Like it doesn't really
There
it,
is.
it maybe doesn't follow the structure of comics generally because they don't know the structure of comics generally, or I assume they do because they must have reverence for it, otherwise they wouldn't be doing it. Like they must read it.
Yeah.
But it's
What
it's
and
yeah,
like Corey Taylor when he did what was it, the House of Bones, I think, for
right.
Image. Um, it was an odd transition because it's like he's a lyricist and a fantastic musician. And then you're curious how is that going to transition to the comic book realm.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you're reading it, and I'm just like, oh, I see. He's trying to be more like what he is as a musician. And I think
Yeah.
Avril Lavigne, didn't she do one too?
Oh, really?
I think so, yeah.
I know Tegan and Sarah have one that's out that's kind of popular, like graphic novel.
Really?
So yeah,
Huh.
so there's people out there doing it. It's just like I know Jonathan Mayberry, who is the name I couldn't think of earlier, that I think did some Punisher comics at one point.
Yeah.
And um, he's a guy. He did Moon Knight for quite a while. Houston, I think
Okay.
he's a writer too, like a book writer. So
Yeah.
there's guys in
Actually,
there.
I read a lot of Jonathan Mayberry, so
Oh,
that's funny.
really? Yeah,
Yeah,
he did
but
like a Punisher the End or something comic, maybe. I don't know if it was,
okay.
or maybe it was a Max miniseries. He did some kind of a Punisher miniseries, I remember one time. Then and a few other
Yeah,
things.
because I follow his Joe Ledger books.
Oh yeah, right,
Yeah, which are, the zombie ones, but kind
right,
of
right.
like, yeah,
Hmm.
they're
And I
fun.
know, yeah, I remember I read a comic by also blanking on his name, the guy that wrote he wrote Bubba Hotep, the book or the story that was turned into the movie.
Right.
Joe Lansdale, that's it.
Okay.
And he wrote like a sequel to Bubba Hotep or a prequel or something, um, as a comic that was out there. And it
Yeah.
was very different, sort of framed differently, and just reads different. I guess I feel like, and I don't know because I've never had to work on a project with someone where I've done that, but like I imagine the scripts would be interesting to see from someone who's like a writer. I imagine it'd be more like the Frank Miller kind of
Yeah.
script where it's like a story and there's nothing about what he wants in each panel or anything. You just have to like interpret it in the way that you get the story moving.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that it's I've noticed with my scripts, it's like I always feel I add too much to each descriptive.
Mhm.
For like panel one, I'll just type like a giant paragraph.
Just
And my
frustrating
artist
your
is
your
like,
artist to the max.
yeah,
Yeah.
like Cliff was like, I don't know what you want me to do with this. Like 45 things happen. And that was what
Yeah.
I first started. And
Kind of
even
hard to tell a
now,
story when there's 90 things happening in one panel. Yeah.
oh yeah, like my wife, she'll go through it and she's like, there's a lot of things happening in this panel. And I was
Mm.
like, yep,
Mhm.
sorry, Cliff.
Long suffering relationship between the writer and the artist.
Oh my God. Yeah, I think we've been working together for nearly 20 years.
Oh wow. Well, it's
Yeah.
it's a good
Yeah.
partnership. Well, what
Oh yeah.
so after that first book then, the horror book you worked on, what was the story in that? Like what was the story about? The one you didn't release?
So it's kind of I'm reworking it now,
Oh, okay.
so I'm actually not gonna get
Fair
into
enough.
it because
That's fair
it's
enough.
still building.
Hmm.
But I immediately jumped into another book called Contagion
Hmm.
that came out a year later.
So the adaptation
And
of the Steven Soderbergh film, I take it? I'm kidding.
so that one cuts a bit deep
Oh, really? Did it
because
come out at the same
it
time?
does.
Oh
It,
shit.
mine came out before,
Uh-huh.
and I'll tell you
Yeah,
actually.
go ahead.
So Contagion was the first release project that I ever did with Cliff Richards,
Hmm.
and it's a zombie story about a plausible infection.
Hmm.
So I did all the science and I did all the creation of this, and I went to Chicago, I want to say Wizard World in 2007, and I met the gentleman who ran Scream Factory and Fangoria
Oh,
Comics.
I'm a big fan of Scream Factory's Blu-rays. That's a boutique label.
Yeah,
I collect physical media for movies that I like, and I have a lot of Scream Factory ones. So that's cool.
yeah. So I think his name was Scott Licindia.
Hmm.
I can't remember. It's been so long. And so he's like, I really like your art. I really like your story. So he hands me a contract. I sign the contract. Book's about to get published. Unfortunately, Fangoria goes through a financial hardships,
Hmm.
and the book was scrapped from production. But it was originally still supposed to be a film because it was optioned.
Really?
And Tobin Bell was actually supposed to play the lead.
Wow.
And
Wow. Okay. This is your first
yeah,
thing? Your first
this is
thing
my
is
first
option
thing.
for a film already? That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, and this was right before like the big boom in the comic books. I think Walking Dead was just starting.
Hmm.
And so a lot of people in realm were like, hey, we got to jump on the next big thing. And unfortunately, the company that was supposed to option it, that too went down. And so the book got delayed. What ended up happening next is, from my understanding, the book was still being shopped around, script was being reworked. Contagion is released a couple years later through Steven Soderbergh, funnily enough, taking place in Minnesota.
Oh, right. I
Yeah.
didn't think of that.
And so
Yeah.
I end up changing the title and it becomes Dead Reckoning.
Mhm.
And that got picked up through Arcana
Oh, cool.
BC. And so that's how all that kind of came to be. And
That's wild.
after that, I created my first satire book.
Mhm. Would that be
Which is
Bible too?
it is not.
Oh,
It is Abe the Aborted Fetus.
oh. Excellent. Well, walk me through that one. What is
So
Abe's story?
so Abe the Aborted Fetus, the elevator pitch is it's a story about a fetus that survives an abortion to become a part of the greatest conspiracy ever conceived.
Mhm.
Resistance is fetal. Um,
Very clever.
Basically,
Very clever. I
it's
like that a lot.
it's a massive piss take on everything. I always say that it's kind of the most nihilistic book
Mm.
because everybody in that book is terrible.
Yeah. Well, a lot of
Whether it's
conspiracy-minded things are like
yeah,
you have to generally think like I have an interesting, my take on most conspiracy theories is nobody's that organized. People think like
oh
if
yeah,
you ever been in a group of people and tried to organize them, if you think that like you could like a global conspiracy where thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people are in on it, like when the COVID one was going around, they're like, I think it was John Oliver said like, conspiracies have existed. The reason we know they have is because someone talked. Eventually, someone talks, and there's studies that show the amount of people in it drastically change how quickly it'll come out. So the more people, the smaller the window that you have for it to
yep,
be a secret. For COVID, it'd be millions of people would have to be on it, like millions, and nobody's
oh
talking.
yeah.
Nobody, But and it also has to assume that all these people are just fucking evil, right? Like that, like people don't
Yeah.
think 9/11 was an inside job and George Bush knew about it. It's like you think he woke up and looked in the mirror and said, "Today's the day." Like thousands of people are going to die, tens of thousands of people. And I'm fine. I'll be able to go about my life and not care that I did this. It's like I know not everyone is moralistic or at least has a conscience, but I feel like a lot of people that have to be involved in
Oh
that
yeah.
would have to, would have to have a nihilistic view and think
Yeah.
that everybody's kind of terrible to think that that many conspiracies exist, especially ones that
Oh,
dark.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And you think that you're gonna have the highest level of government be in on the job.
Yeah, killing its own
You're gonna you're,
citizens.
you're gonna have like certain degrees of separation.
Yeah.
Like I always find that any conspiracy generally involving the head office is like
Yeah, yeah. It's wild how quickly people go to that. Alan Moore kind of summed it up best where he said that like conspiracy theorists like the idea of a conspiracy because it gives you comfort in knowing that somebody's in charge, somebody knows what's going on. There's some method
yeah,
to all this madness, and that it's scarier instead of thinking about like the Jewish banking commission or the lizard people that live beneath the earth or whatever you want to believe. Are running things than the horrible truth, which is it's rudderless and it's just random. Everything's random and like you never know what's going to
yeah.
happen and bad things can happen out of the blue and you'll never be able to guess because it's completely random and that's scarier and it's
Oh
true.
yeah.
But
I always my favorite conspiracy though is the evil satanic Hollywood. It's
I
and it's
like
like
there's a guy that believes that birds aren't real. He's pretty active on social media. He thinks all birds are spy drones or cameras. Like birds
yep.
don't. And I like this guy. Like this guy. He's very dogmatically believes birds are not real.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
I know. There's people like that's
Oh.
the beauty of the internet is everybody gets a voice. We can all hear your insane theory, no matter who you are.
Oh yeah, yeah. And sometimes those ones are the ones that are amplified even more, like
Yes.
Pizzagate.
Oh yeah. Well, that one's nuts.
Yeah,
Like there's real world, there's real world.
yeah,
This is kind of my problem with people like Rogan. I won't say I hate him or anything because I don't know him super well. I'm more of a Mark Maron guy, but the idea that like you if you have that big of an audience and you can say I don't know, I'm not an expert, but and whether you can say that as much as you want, but when you have that much sort of power, that many ears listening on you, there are people that are going to listen to what you say and take it to heart. So like, and you
Yeah.
get guys like Alex Jones or whatever that are out there talking about whatever. I was so happy to see that guy go down, and
Yep.
lose everything, because those parents, that lost their kids deserve it. But the yeah, the satanic Hollywood, all that, it's insane. It's insane. Like you think Tom Hanks is eating babies somewhere? Like what do you like? It's like there's people that generally believe that stuff, and it's
Oh
wild,
my God. Oh,
wild.
I love it. It's and the thing is, most of the people who like spew that kind of shit, they don't
Mhm.
believe it.
Yeah.
None of them believe it. And but yet all of us are sitting there, we're like, you know what, that's plausible.
Hmm.
What
Well,
if? What if?
people like to elevate themselves and feel like they're more, or look like they're, like I'm some expert. And it's an easy way to say, well, I have more information than you. It's with COVID, with whatever. So like,
Yeah.
I know the truth, and like it's a way to make yourself feel like you're above others because you have some inside track on what's really going on because you read some fucking website somewhere that, it's like that has like do your research by going to some website that's like fuckliberals.net, and like, oh, these guys are unbiased, they must have the truth. Like,
Oh my God.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like
Oh my.
it's insane.
It's it's fun though. It's
Yeah, well,
like,
if you look at it in a comedic way, in the kind of jokery, like everything's ridiculous and you just have to laugh
yeah.
at it, then yes, and that's kind of how I mostly try to approach things because it's
Oh yeah.
easy, it's
Well,
easier.
like what I did with Abe.
Yeah, yeah.
This is a spoiler alert for the
Uh,
ending.
okay.
Um, so just for anybody who wants to read it, the whole point of why the Catholic Church is trying to ban abortion
Mhm.
is so that Jesus actually was born of, he was actually the first fetus that survived an abortion. And so the church is trying to force the immaculate conception again without the immaculate conception, but the miracle birth.
Mm,
And Jesus, having survived, Abe now survives. And so you have all these religious zealots kind of trying to like make
mm,
him be the second coming of Christ. So then they can kill him, crucify him, and bring about the rapture.
mhm.
And I refer to them as rapture baiters.
This is great. I
And
must read
so
this.
the entire story is based on that. And it was just like, all right, what if everybody was shitty,
Hmm. Yeah.
including the government? And it's actually being led by a secret organization called the Freedom Against Religious Tyranny, which the acronym is FART,
Mhm. Perfect.
by JFK. And so the
Mhm.
government is trying to use like stem cell research to try to rebuild JFK's body. So everybody is trying to kill Abe.
This is very good. How many states is this banned in? I imagine quite a few.
Oh, I think all of them are there. It's legal. I have been banned in Egypt,
Oh,
Saudi Arabia.
well, that makes sense.
I have been told that I'm not welcome back to the Vatican.
Okay. Like,
So
did they send you a letter? Like, how do you know you're not welcome back?
I got a letter, but I don't know if it was legitimate.
Uh-huh.
And it was actually because I sent a book. It was this and Bible too I had sent, and it was actually to somebody in Vatican City.
Really?
And my book got denied, so it came back to me and it said, "You are not welcome. None of your products are welcome here. Please
Oh,
refrain." And I was
wow.
like, "Oh, okay. Well,
So is it like
you know,
somebody in Vatican City tried to buy a copy?
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah. Wow. That's
yeah."
wild.
And then I had the return. This was back, I want to say 2013, 2014.
I love that there's
So,
some like maybe it's probably some kid rebelling against like his parents that are related to the religious organization somehow by ordering this so you can
oh,
make some great rebellious mark.
I imagine that's probably the case.
Yeah.
I can't think the Pope is like, "Hey, I'm gonna check this out.
And
It's
then
the sequel."
the postal service, I guess the Vatican's a country, so I don't know whoever the postal service in the Vatican is, they deny it. He doesn't even get his own copy. He's like,
Yeah.
no, I want to read
Ah.
about Abe.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I
wild.
That was one of the more
That's
bizarre ones.
that's a
I've
point of
I've had a lot
pride.
of it
Yeah.
is. I've had a lot of countries actually send back my books, because they're like, nope, nope, we're not letting this through customs.
Mm. Yeah, that's wild. I mean, it's a book.
Oh yeah.
Like anybody that's into comics, I feel like most artsy people are kind of generally left-leaning folk anyway that are like anti-censorship and like, so it's like just okay, it's not for you. Let the person who wants to read
Yeah.
it. That's fine. you know.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's but I've been finding that as time goes on, I'm finding that it's kind of swinging in both directions.
Mhm.
You'll have the people who are like, "Oh, this is way too offensive. I don't want to read this." And they're liberal. And then you'll have the conservative market, particularly at the Comic Cons, where they're like, "I don't like that you're making fun of Jesus."
Hmm. Do you
Like
get a
I've
lot of that? Do
had,
people come to your table and like, tell
oh
you going
yeah,
to hell and stuff all the time? Is that pretty that common?
I've had religious paraphernalia thrown at me
Oh, like crosses and
when
stuff?
I'm sitting there. I've had a cross, yeah, left on my
What do
table.
they think it's
I've
gonna
had
do? You're
the
gonna burst into flames when it hits you? Like you're
oh,
not a
I
vampire.
I keep them. Like it's
You have like a cross, you have like a cross drawer, you just open it and drop another cross in. It's like overflowing, you
it's
can't get it
it's
closed.
mostly Bibles. I actually
Oh
was
yeah.
sitting there, New York Comic Con, and I think this was like 2016, and somebody just whipped a Bible right at my head.
Wow.
I, I've had like Book of Mormon books left everywhere,
Mhm.
and just it's I've had it mostly at like the Reed Pop shows, like when I do like New York Comic Con or C2E2. Those are usually the most aggressive.
Hmm.
When I was down in Kansas City, this was about a year or two after Bible 2 was released. I got protested by the Westboro Baptists.
Oh, that's fun. Man, you got a great resume here. Those guys are
I
great.
know.
You and
I piss off a lot of people.
you and Kevin Smith here in the same company. This is great.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody was telling me that he actually went out and protested with them.
Yeah, he did. I think maybe it was Red State. I can't remember what one, but nobody knew what he looked like, so he just went and
Dogma.
like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So
Yeah.
he just went and stood in the audience, made a sign, and like got pictures taken, just like protesting his own movie.
Oh
I
yeah.
think it's pretty
Yeah.
great.
Well, I did a special cover for them.
Oh, nice.
Uh, I I call it the Even More Jesus cover. Or no, I'm sorry, not the Even More Jesus. Face Full of Peter edition.
Oh,
Sorry.
nice. Perfect.
It's both Jesus and Peter spooning in a state of undress on a
Hmm.
bare rug, bunch of sex toys all over. Diarrhea says, "Dear diarrhea, there's something about Peter. Just tried sodomy and Gomorrah." And I made that specifically just for the Westboro Baptists.
Perfect. That's lovely.
They loved it.
I'm sure they did. What was that? What is that? What came after Abe, the Bible too?
Yeah, so Bible 2, it was actually just a parody book that I never intended to write.
Hmm.
I did a like a just like a poster because I was like a fan of like the Grindhouse
Hmm.
kind of pretend movies that never are going to happen and end up actually happening, like Machete.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh, quite a few of them now.
oh yeah, exactly. And that's how Bible 2 originally started. Was I did this book. I was like, because Jesus is in my book, but he has like PTSD and he works at like a Mexican restaurant called Taco Jesus. And he needs money, and so how do you get money? You get residuals from the book. So he's going to write the sequel to the best-selling book of all time, where he's a
Yeah.
badass. And so I was like, all right, would be funny. And it was him riding a T-Rex fighting the Pope,
Hmm.
and he's like holding like a Ninja Star of David, and it was like this beautiful, like almost fresco style painting that Amelia Wu did, and she was a New York Times bestseller for like Mercy Thompson Homecoming through
Hmm.
Dynamite,
Yeah.
and we ended up working on some projects together. And I was like, hey, how do you feel about doing this? And she's like, yeah, let's do it. And so we do this, and I'm starting to sell the prints, and it's in the back of the book for Abe. And people are like, if you don't write the Bible too, I will do it. And I was like, the fuck you are. So I go home from like Wizard World. And New York Comic Con is 2 months away. So I buy these two bottles of like Evil Twin Brewing, I think is what it is. And it's Even More Jesus. And what I didn't know at the time is that it was like 16% or something
Hmm.
ABV. And it goes down like water.
Hmm.
And I got so hammered that I wrote the entire first issue of the book in a single evening. And instead of sobering up to proofread it, I instantly sent it off to Amelia. And I'm hungover the next day. I get up and I'm like, oh shit, what did I do? What did I send her? And so I pull up the script from the email and I'm like, okay, thank God it's fine. And so we get this book done, I want to say in less than 30 days.
Wow.
And I
Because her
had
her
the flop.
art is beautiful. Like it's
Oh,
like to do that in 30 days is incredibly impressive.
oh, it's unreal.
Yeah.
Like the amount of talent she has. She's actually the artist that I've probably outside of Cliff worked with the most.
Mhm.
She does covers, so she did the cover for Abe. She
Mhm.
does all the Bible too. She did my book Sioux Falls. Um, Currently she has taken over the art duty for Trash and Can It.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah. So just been a heck of a working relationship with her. So she's been great.
So are
Doesn't
you
speak a word of English.
oh really? How did she well, I guess
Yeah.
she must just translate your scripts.
So she can read and write certain English, and I think she does get some help from translators.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's been kind of fun being like, all right, how's this gonna get interpreted?
Well, is it? I mean, obviously, I guess you could have guessed it would have been received the way it was, and the way it is, I guess, by biblical people. I mean, anytime you touch anything related to the Bible, people get very offended, um, which is wild to me because a lot of people that really take the Bible as gospel, I guess, in quotes, for lack of a better term, or are the same people that are like, do your own research when it comes to a lot of this other stuff. And it's like, if you do any research about the Bible, or at least about the history of religion,
Oh yeah,
you'll come to the same understanding that it's a weird mismatch of, a bunch of other things that came before it. I just saw,
but
so I literally drove by a sign today that said, keep Christ in Christmas. And I was like, I mean, if
Jesus,
Christ existed, if they figure he's born in the middle of the summer, and also like they just kind
yeah,
of the Catholic Church just co-opted like the Yuletide
yeah,
holiday and made it Christmas. So like it's like a lot of these people don't know anything that they're talking about. It's just this dogmatic belief. I'd be curious about the statistic about people that like get so offended by the Bible being depicted in any way besides a realistic depiction of what's in it, and who have
yeah.
actually read it. I think it would be a very
Most don't,
yeah,
most don't, and a
I'd
lot of the
be.
people that have the loudest opinions at the shows have never read the book.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, it's wild. It's wild, and that's it.
Like,
Like, I mean, even if they read not read your book, not read the Bible, they just know, well, Jesus is doing something goofy here. This is not my Jesus. This is sacrilegious, and that guy's a monster
yeah,
for doing it. And it's like, come on,
oh,
insane.
100%. And I just wrapped up volume two, Double Crossed. So that's finally done. That took 10 years to write. Um, because I was like, it would be a really good time setting for that. The American Revolution.
Even better.
Never again.
No,
So many things happen,
yeah,
and it's just like, oh my God, why the hell did I pick this?
yeah, great. I mean, yeah, you can offend, the religious sector, the history revisionist sector, the
Yep.
uh you know you can do the Civil War next. Like, why not? Sure, that'll go well.
Oh
Yeah.
man, oh my God. Yeah. No, I'm working on the third one right now.
Mhm.
Um, I think that one's titled Come Get Psalm.
Mhm. Nice. I'm a big sucker for puns. That's perfect.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's all that I write. Everything that I do, like for my humor, is
Mhm.
always like based on a pun. The second Abe that I'm writing is called Midwife Crisis, and I'm hoping to top
Great.
that off with a trilogy called Miscarriage of Justice.
Perfect.
Uh, so the other one I had was like, Jesus fucking crisis, but I was like, eh.
Yeah. Yeah. Should do a whole what the H stands for. Do a whole, when people say Jesus H Christ.
Oh yeah, it's Howard.
Yeah, perfect. Great.
Howard
How,
be thy name.
oh my God, of course. That is perfect. That is perfect. Well, it's interesting to me just like that you gravitated towards sort of the parody spoof sort of counterculture sort of take on stuff because of the early influences like Squee and those things
Yeah.
were very like, definitely going against the grain about what was acceptable at the time period. And also kind of opening up a world for what's different and interesting about independent comics. Um,
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
wild to me
and
that a lot of these people are getting quite old now. So it's like weird that like these people that were like these like fuck the system, I'm gonna make these weird ass comics and who cares what anybody thinks about it, are now like, they're 60s, 70s. And it's like,
yeah.
you know, it's wild. Like that Robert Crumb documentary they did, Crumb. You watch it. I mean, he's even quite a bit older now because that movie came out decades ago. But it's just weird seeing him living in an apartment, having a life, being weird as hell, which you'd expect. But it's like it's just weird. It's strange these people kind of live in your space,
Yeah.
and you always think they're the person they were when they made that first thing that drew you to it. But they've
Oh,
moved.
absolutely. And what's weird too, there are times where you're like, all right, I do this, but I also want to do other things.
Mm,
So I'm trying to find ways to keep doing what I want to do, but also do the things that I also want to do, but keep them entirely separated.
mm.
And
I,
so for me, it's most people aren't going to do too much research. So if I create like a secondary name, they're kind of like, eh,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
There was some writer. Who was it? Um, Oh, I'll have to think about it. But that he just like started writing books on Amazon under a pseudonym, and he's actually kind of big in another realm. But I can't remember what it was. But
interesting.
like the horror books kind of took off, and like some of his stuff got made into things later, and it's just like surprising, that you can go out there and do that. What does your
Yeah.
like your family, your parents, your wife think about these sort of things? Are they accepting of
Oh
the
yeah. Yeah.
stuff you're
So
doing?
actually, my wife is very, very supportive. We were actually introduced by my publisher.
Oh, perfect.
And so my first book that was brought to her attention was, I want to say, Sioux Falls.
Hmm.
And I was flown up to Toronto. And we started kind of just chatting about it because it's like an indigenous steampunk story inspired by the 1862 Dakota Uprising. And being Dakota myself and having my great 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 grandfather amongst one of the 38 plus two who
Really? Wow.
was hanged outside the walls of Fort Snelling on the orders of Abraham Lincoln in the largest mass execution in American history. I kind of wanted to do like a reimagining or retelling, but incorporate like the Dakota language, Dakota oratory, and add like supernatural elements to it, and just not have it play out exactly because it's a pretty depressing story otherwise. And so we kind of got together, and she's been successful in her line of work. I don't know how much you know about my wife.
I don't know anything.
Okay, so she's actually a voice actress for like Resident Evil and X-Men and all that
Oh,
stuff.
wow. Okay, cool.
And she was also Lunette the Clown in The Big Comfy Couch.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Okay. Well, that makes
And
sense.
so yeah, so we kind of
Oh, your
met
wife
up
is
and
Allison.
yes.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I noticed you
So
said me and Allison went to it. We're at this thing, and I just assumed you meant that like she was at the event that you were at the same time. I didn't realize. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
So being in the kind of the same line of work
Mhm.
really really helps because we're doing the show circuits, whether she's supporting me or I'm out there supporting her. We're very supportive of one another.
Oh, that's cool.
My mom, she's fine with it. My dad, little less so, but he supports me.
Mhm.
Um, his side of the family is very, very religious,
Mhm.
which is funny because he's actually the indigenous side. But with
I
all,
was, I kind of assumed maybe not because of that reason, but there is a weird
yeah,
crossover with that. I think it's because, well, in Canada especially, um, somewhat because of like there was a point in our history, which is one of the darker Canadian stories, where like the government took away Native children and made them
yep.
go to residential schools.
And that's the
And
same here too.
yeah, oh, that was okay. It was not
My
as part of
grandmother actually was a victim of the boarding school.
really.
Yeah,
Wow.
and she never spoke about it while she was alive, but beaten into her was the belief of God
Mm.
and the fear of God. And only recently, now that she has passed, did we ever find out that she actually did a long interview about her experiences in the boarding school.
Wow.
And so my dad sent me that, and so that's actually, I think, in the last 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and
What
she's
was
been
it on,
gone
like a show or
for almost
something, or?
20. No, so in my tribe we have a history center
Oh, cool.
and a cultural center. So before she died from her emphysema, she had one of the people going and kind of collecting stories from the elders
Hmm.
and just listen to her speak.
Wow.
And she kind of recounted her experience. And when you go to the cultural center on our tribe, on our reservation, you'll actually hear her speak
Oh, wow.
about it. And it's more of the, not censored, but just for time
Yeah, they
because
kept it down.
yeah, but I have the full uncut audio
Wow.
and
That's
it's
wild.
tough. It's
Yeah.
tough. But yeah, like Kamloops up in Canada and all
Mhm.
that. So it's awful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, whenever Canadians tend to get a little smug, especially when things, and to our neighbors to the south, get a little complicated, about, like that our history's better, or we have things more together, and it's like anywhere, people are fucked up. It doesn't matter
Oh
what
yeah.
history you look at, there's going to be a lot of skeletons in the closet, and
Well,
that's a big one of ours for sure.
yeah. I always think it's funny because I always hear them be like, "Well, my racism's different than yours." Like,
Yeah, who wins that argument, really?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. It's like, okay, good job, I guess.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
as someone who kind of created something out there, do you find, does it sort of, I like representation in different types, in different projects like that, I guess, like comics until more recently, and even now, I'm sure it's not great, didn't have a massive like Native American uh
No,
representation. I mean, there are a few
no.
X-Men characters here and there and some other people, but
Yeah, we have Thunderbird, we have Echo. My favorite is Turok.
oh
I'm
yes,
just gonna
Son of
throw that out
Stone, Son
there.
of
Son of
Stone.
Stone. I have all the hardcovers. I have Dinosaur Hunter.
Really? That's
Oh
awesome.
yeah. If I could ever write for a like another project that I don't own, um, I would have two. One would be Duke Nukem,
Hmm.
and then the other one would be Turok.
Nice. I wonder
Like
who has Turok now. What comic company would have that?
I is it Dynamite?
Oh, that makes sense. They have a lot of strange
Could
sort
be,
of
could be
older
Dynamite.
properties that are still in there.
Yeah. Or no. Or is it IDW? It moves because I
Hmm.
know originally it was well, actually, I don't remember who it was originally. Let me see. I actually got this Valiant.
Yeah, it was like Valiant, and it was like Gold
Yeah.
Key and stuff, or one of those ones way back in the day, wasn't it?
Yeah. I was gifted this when I was down in
I have that
Cincinnati.
exact same comic, not signed, but
Yeah.
that's awesome. That's super cool.
Yeah. Oh, it's my favorite. Like I have like downstairs, I have like a big giant statue of like Turok fighting a velociraptor with a knife, like on the cover of the N64 game. So I'm like, all right.
That's cool. Yeah, it looks like it's with Dynamite currently. Last person to write it was Chuck Wendig.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That sounds about right.
Yeah, that's cool. Oh, that'd be great. I'd love to see a cool relaunch version of Turok. I remember
Oh
like
yeah.
when the video game came out. I remember that was like as a kid for the 64, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, that was a cool game.
I think the last one they did was a gritty remake for the PS3 and the Xbox 360.
Really?
Yeah, and it was kind of like a military shooter. Fun. It wasn't great. And then I think they had like almost like a chibi Turok game that came out on like Steam like
Okay.
5, 6 years ago.
Wild. That's
Like
weird.
I think it's like a two-player game. Yeah, I have it on my Steam deck, but I've never played it.
Ah, wow.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, that's yeah, no, and I guess more recently I know the uh uh what's the show? Reservation Dogs was a very interesting one, which I really enjoyed as well.
Yes. Oh my
A lot of Canadian actors showed up in that, which I thought was really cool. So we had a
Oh
show
yeah.
here when I was a kid. There's a show called North of 60, which was like all took place on I think it was in the Northwest Territories or somewhere. And it was like a white cop goes to be the cop for the liaison to this reservation or whatever, and then it kind of gets tied up with all the stuff going on, and it's criminal activity and whatever. But it went on for quite a while, and a lot of those actors that were on that show generally show up in a lot of
Yeah.
American television playing indigenous characters. I know Graham Greene, of course, that's where I first met him. But he's every time anything has an older Native character, he tends to show up in it. He was on
He does.
Reservation Dogs. He was in The Last of Us. Wind
Yep.
River. He's in that, which is a fantastic movie. Um, yeah, and quite a few of those actors were Canadian, so I really
Oh
dug it.
yeah. Yeah. It's very incestuous. I would say particularly in the Native community.
Yeah,
Um,
I have to make the
every
joke every time. Almost every single mainstream movie when they need a Native American man, it's always Adam Beach, like almost every single time. Like I remember I made that
Yep.
joke when they did the first Suicide School movie and he played Slipknot, and then I was like, and you watch the trailer and you're like, oh, he's not going to make it that long because you only see him at the beginning and then you never see him in any other clips. I'm like, he's
Oh
definitely the guy that
no.
tries to escape and they kill right away. But then like in
Oh,
the New Mutants, when like the girl, you finally see the girl's dad, and of course it's Adam Beach, and I'm like, of course it's Adam Beach. Yeah.
oh my God.
Well, now
Yep.
that he's getting older, I
Yep.
guess it's maybe not quite anymore. But there was a period where like it was always him.
Yeah. Well, he'd be a good Tommy from Prey.
Mm. I really want them to
Yeah.
make a like a scalped series. I think that
Me
would
too.
the Jason Aaron comic was insanely good.
Yeah.
It'd be very cool to see all of those actors put into another show where they get to do that because it was a great crime comic. It'd make for a really good like HBO
Yeah.
show or
Oh, Vertigo, just that entire run with like 100 Bullets,
Hmm.
Constantine. Uh, yeah, Scalped is one of my all-time favorites. I actually in my bookshelf I have the entire series, and I probably will be rereading those. It's been a
Yeah,
while.
I've been thinking it's been a while too. I have all the single issues. I think I might have the first trade and the rest of single issues, but
Oh wow.
yeah, as I think somebody at my local comic shop. There's a really lovely comic shop in Halifax, if you're ever in Nova Scotia, called Strange Adventures. That
Yeah.
It's Halifax about an hour from here, but in the town I live in, we don't have any comic shops. So that sell new comics anyway. There's some older ones that just carry old stuff. But yeah, they I think I was in there and somebody just suggested to me one of the guys that works there, and I remember I read the first trade and I was like, this is insanely good. And just kind of kept with it. And brought me a Jason Aaron, of course, and I followed him quite a bit because he's in a lot of
Yeah.
good. Oh, that's awesome. What's next? Is it the next Bible 2 and
So
uh
I'm back to horror.
oh really? Cool.
Yeah. So I have a new book that I'm working on again with Cliff Richards.
Nice.
It is called The Biotic Crisis. It's a story about a doomsday cult that comes into possession of an alien life form that can wipe all life out on Earth. And it takes place during the single span of a night when a group of federal agents go down and try to prevent the cult from releasing the creature.
Interesting.
And
Cool.
it's heavily inspired by like The Thing, The Blob, Resident Evil. So I kind of wanted to do something that was like high octane, kind of edge of your seat, just super violent.
That's
Um,
awesome.
Actually, I have the book right here.
Oh wow. That's a beautiful cover.
So it is gnarly. It's one of the most violent books I've ever written.
And is that out now?
I have limited copies of it.
Oh, okay.
I'm working with my publisher at the moment. And we're gonna try to get that into mass market,
Yeah.
but it's it's actually one of my favorite books that I've written.
Wow, it looks gorgeous. I'm definitely check that
Well,
out.
thank you. Oh, and I said the next book I'm doing is the all ages book for Trash and Can
Yeah.
It.
And I usually look at the some of the work that I can find online in advance. Obviously I didn't do as deep a amount of research. I didn't realize that who your wife was. That's super cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
must be interesting to have such a creative family, in a way that
yeah.
you're both kind of in different spectrums, but there's sort of a Venn diagram where it comes together. That's really neat.
Oh, it's funny how much our line of work actually is very similar, even though they're in very different like avenues.
Yeah.
Like you look at the voice acting community, very incestuous. Like
Mhm.
everybody's in everything. Like we'll watch TV and a voiceover will come on and she'll be like, "That's Martin Roach," or "I know that person and I know that person," and I'm like, "Okay, that must be weird."
Well, it's also wild
Like,
when you're kind of a public figure because it must be wild to be adjacent to a public figure in the way that you are, in a
yeah,
way that like, because if you're an any kind of public figure and people come up to you and talk to you like they know you,
yeah,
because they can know so much about you and you don't even know anything about them. It's got to be weird when people come to see her with their preconceived notions about what she is when you know who she is because she's your wife. You obviously know her
yeah.
well. So like it must be kind of wild to see that juxtaposition happen a lot where like people come up and be like have this preconceived notion about who she is as a person without actually knowing her when you get to see kind of both sides of it.
Yeah. It's when we do a lot of the conventions, what's wild is people will come up and you will hear like about their childhood and how
Mm,
much she means to them and how she, even though she wasn't physically there,
mm,
but like the impact that she had on these people's lives is it's pretty incredible.
yeah,
Yeah, it's been fun kind of seeing that.
yeah.
Um,
That's
and
the good side of it for sure.
oh, it is
Yeah,
like we've basically had mostly really positive interactions with
good.
with the fan base. Um, I, on the other hand, like
Getting Bibles
people,
whipped at
well,
your head.
yeah,
Yeah.
I get people trying to fight me, so it's a little different.
I just love the idea of the two tables beside each other. It's like all the people come in with like the big comfy couch merchandise
Yep.
to get signed, and then beside it is you getting Bibles and being people you telling you're going to hell, and it's
Oh
just
my
so fun.
God.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's funny because back when I started this,
Mm.
like people were not confrontational at all.
No, no.
They would just like, oh, that's not for me. And
Which is how
then,
it should be. Which is how it
oh
should be.
yeah, now people just like, I'm gonna fight you. And I'm like, oh, I'm jet lagged. I don't want to fight.
Yeah. It'd be great if you like you spent time becoming like some kind of karate badass. Like you learned every
Oh
black
my
belt
God.
martial art just so you could like whoop the hell out of these people.
I
Uh
I always tell people I'm kind of like Homer Simpson on the rope a dope thing.
oh nice, perfect.
Yeah.
They'll
Hey, just
tire out and pass out before they knock you down.
yeah,
Yeah.
just push them over and be like, yep, that's it.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much for being on the show, man. This is a blast.
No, thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
This is really fun, and I look forward to reading the book. So I'm gonna have to go check some of these out. This
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, after we set up, you should send me your address. I'll mail out a package.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. I would
Yeah,
appreciate
you're
that.
welcome.
Sweet. Well, thanks again, man. This has been a blast.
Yeah, thank you.
And have a great day.
All right. Yeah, you too. Take care.
Bye. There it is, my conversation with Z.M.Thomas. As a Canadian, you may be hearing me say the word Z instead of Z, which is the general Canadian assumption. I don't know, man. I know I'm proud Canadian. I celebrate almost all Canadian things. I do certainly fit into many Canadian stereotypes. However, I've never got behind the Z. I think it looks cool when you have characters like Lord Zed or Zed this, Zed that, but when it comes to names, I don't know. Like the rhyme, I think it's because the rhyme, the alphabet rhyme's been stuck in my head my entire life. The A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. It just rhymes. It doesn't rhyme if you put Z. It's like the only one in all of those letters that don't end in an E sound. It's very strange, but that is the Canadian way. As is the U, adding a U to many letters, which I do when I write. And even though Facebook and many other American-based social media platforms tell me it's misspelt, I still let it go through for the most part. Sometimes I miss them when they autocorrect. But I will hold to that. The Z thing, ZZ, I don't know. I host trivia whenever I say Z, people always like boo me, because it should be Z. I don't care. Man, be Z, be Z, be whatever makes you happy, whatever floats your boat. I'm not picking a side, man. If you feel passionately about your Zs, then you go for it. If you feel passionate about your Zs, you go for it. If you're coldly indifferent like me, but you think Z just sounds a little better, then do that too. Who cares? All right, be sure to tune in next week for another scintillating episode. I have an idea who that is. I'm just waiting on them right now to come into a conversation so we can get that going. So I will have that posted on the socials. But in the meantime, stay safe, have fun, read some comics, and hey, make some cool plans for 2025. You deserve it.
The Graphic Histories podcast is a proud partner of the United Federation of Podcasts.